Dear friends, today we will discuss a very important clinical problem often faced in neonates, especially the high-risk neonates, that is neonatal hypoglycemia. To understand this holistically, we will discuss the topic in following domains, that is glucose hemostasis, definition and etiology, classification, presentation, evaluation and workup, and finally, the management and long-term outcome of hypoglycemia. The birth of the baby heralds a serial adaptation of glucose handling in the baby. In intrauterine life, there is a continuous supply of glucose from the mother. However, this abruptly stops at birth, leading to a nadir at 1 to 2 hours of life. This fall in the first 1 to 2 hours of birth is called as transient neonatal hypoglycemia, which normally quickly stabilizes by 3 to 4 hours. However, it does take 12 to 24 hours for a neonate to mature and tolerate fasting and maintain a normal blood glucose level in the range of 45 to 50 milligrams per deciliter. Any maladaptation in the above transition may lead to hypoglycemia. During the fasting states, in the diagram one can see that the glucose is maintained by glucogenolysis within first 12 hours of fasting. Later, within 24 hours, two mechanisms help the body to cope up with fasting state. The first mechanism is where triglycerides are broken down to glycerol and free fatty acids, and glucose is obtained by gluconeogenesis from glycerol. And the second mechanism is by lipolysis, wherein ketone bodies are formed that act as an alternate source. Proteolysis as a mechanism from muscles is a mechanism that occurs very late. In a high-risk neonate, this complex regulation is disturbed and leads to pathological hypoglycemia, translating into associated morbidity and mortality. The hormonal regulation is also very important to maintain the glucose hemostasis. Most of the hormones, example the growth hormone, cortisol, glucagon and epinephrine, all increase the blood glucose levels, and only insulin is the most important hormone that reduces the blood glucose levels. A universal definition of hypoglycemia is lacking, as particular cutoff or duration at which adverse neurodevelopmental outcome are observed is not exactly known, as no single concentration or range is known to be associated with clinical deterioration, and hence an operational threshold has also not been of much clinical benefit. WHO and American Academy of Pediatrics recommends a cutoff of 45 mg per deciliter and 47 mg per deciliter respectively. Recently, a study also showed that maintaining blood sugar levels as 36 mg per dl in term and near-term babies was also associated with similar neurodevelopmental impairment as with a cutoff of 47 mg per dl. Hence, even though not evidence-based, currently a blood sugar level of less than 40 mg and a plasma blood sugar level of less than 45 mg per dl is used as a cutoff for neonatal hypoglycemia. If you look at the etiology of hypoglycemia, it varies according to the day of onset. It is seen that transient hypoglycemia in initial few days or weeks is usually seen in preterms, small for gestational age babies, or in situations of perinatal stress like birth asphyxia and sepsis. However, a much prolonged hypoglycemia can be encountered in states of hyperinsulinism. Hyperinsulinism state can be very transient. It can persist for few weeks or rarely longer. Other frequently encountered causes of persistent hypoglycemia are hypopituitarism and inborn errors of metabolism. A study done in India determined the signs and symptoms of hypoglycemic neonate. It was seen that around 55% of neonates were symptomatic. Among symptomatic babies, the common symptoms were jitteriness, lethargy, convulsions, and apnea. Other presentations included refusal to feed, hyporeflexia, irritability, cyanosis, high-pitched cry, hypothermia, tachypnea, pallor, and a very few of the neonates had cardiac arrest. A good healthy term baby or a breastfeed baby do not need any screening. Only babies at high risk, like babies who are preterm, small for gestational age, babies who are born to diabetic mothers, babies with birth asphyxia, babies with RH isoimmunization, and babies on intravenous fluids and total parenteral nutrition need monitoring. It is also important to estimate the day of onset of hypoglycemia, whether the baby is symptomatic or asymptomatic, what is the severity of episodes, and relation to feeds to suspect a particular etiology. Sometimes the etiology can be anticipated by observing for specific clinical signs like a midline defect in hypopituitarism or hepatomegaly in case of glucose storage defects. Monitoring schedule varies with underlying risk factor. In most babies, it is done at an interval of 2, 6, 12, 24, and 48 hours, and finally at 72 hours. When values are normal, the monitoring can be stopped after 48 hours, as after these initial 48 hours, the metabolic adaptation is complete. Hence, some of the authors and the Canadian Pediatric Society suggest that LGA babies can be excluded from monitoring if the blood glucose levels at 12 hours are normal. Similarly, monitoring in SGA babies can also be discontinued if the blood sugar levels are normal at 48 hours. In babies with birth asphyxia, sepsis, shock, or who are on TPN, a 6 to 8 hourly monitoring is done. Once the baby reaches oral feeds and two values are more than 50 mg per dl, then monitoring can be discontinued. Once a day monitoring suffices for babies who are stable on IV fluids after 72 hours. However, babies exhibiting signs compatible with hypoglycemia need to be investigated at any time. It is also important to understand the fallacies of measurement of blood sugar level by various methods. The easiest and the bedside way is the heel prick method. Even though the treatment is initiated based on this method, any value of hypoglycemia should be confirmed with lab values. Blood samples collected should be analyzed immediately to avoid erroneous and low blood glucose levels. The management of hypoglycemia now begins with determining if the baby has symptoms or not. Asymptomatic babies with blood sugar levels less than 20 should be managed like symptomatic hypoglycemia. Asymptomatic babies with blood sugar levels between 20 to 40 mg per dl should be given a trial of oral feeds, which can be EBM or formula feeds, and blood sugar level done after 1 hour. If after this test feed the blood sugar level is more than 40 mg per dl, then we need to just ensure second hourly feed and 6 hourly monitoring for at least 48 hours. Feeding has to be properly established prior to discharge of these babies. But after test feeds, if the repeat blood sugar levels are less than 40 mg per dl, then the baby is again managed as a baby with symptomatic hypoglycemia who had a blood sugar of less than 20 mg per dl. For all symptomatic babies, asymptomatic with blood sugar levels of less than 20, or asymptomatic babies with inability to reach blood sugar more than 40, after trial oral feeds, a bolus of 2 ml per kg of 10% dextrose is given over 1 minute. And simultaneously, these babies are started on a IV glucose infusion rate of 6 mg per kg per minute. Blood sugar should be checked after 30 minutes and then every 6 hours until the blood sugar level is more than 50 mg per dl. If blood sugar levels is less than 50 mg per dl, despite the bolus and the GIR of 6 mg per kg per minute, GIR has to be increased in steps of 2 mg per kg per minute every 15 to 30 minutes until a maximum GIR of 12 mg per kg per minute is reached. If the blood sugar levels are still not maintained on a GIR of 12 mg per kg per minute, then alternative diagnosis of refractory hypoglycemia needs to be thought and investigated. Such baby is referred to a tertiary care center. After 24 hours of IV glucose, if 1 or 2 blood sugar monitorings are more than 50 mg per dl, then infusion can be tapered off at a rate of 2 mg per kg per minute every 6 hours with proper blood sugar monitoring. Tapering to be done simultaneously as the oral feeds are increased. Once the GIR is 4 mg per kg per minute and oral intake is adequate, blood sugars are more than 50 mg per dl, the infusion can be safely stopped. These babies also have long-term outcomes that include neurodevelopmental deficits, visual abnormalities, hearing loss, and combined neurosensory impairment. It is also seen that these babies develop behavioral abnormalities like inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Hence, a detailed neurodevelopmental follow-up of these babies with visual and hearing assessment is very important. To summarize, dear friends, in the end, the important points to remember are: early enteral feeding helps in metabolic adaptation. Poor feeding alone will never cause hypoglycemia beyond a day in a term child. Lab method is the gold standard for diagnosis. All at-risk neonates should be monitored with high index of suspicion. Management protocol should be adhered and transition to early feed should always be encouraged. Hyperinsulinemia should be considered in all refractory cases, and long-term follow-up is mandatory for both symptomatic and asymptomatic high-risk neonates. Thanks.